All right, so we're diving into something today that, well, it might seem a little specific at
Yeah,
first,
okay.
but trust me on this one. It's about the hidden dangers lurking after a flood, especially when we talk about electrical systems. And, you might think, okay, that's for beachfront properties,
hmm
but the truth is, this is important for everyone.
It's interesting how we tend to focus on that immediate visual impact, right? The chaos after a flood.
Yeah.
But what we often overlook are the dangers that are hidden, lurking within structures that might even look untouched from the outside.
It's like they say, out of sight, out of mind. But in this case, ignoring that problem, it can lead to some serious consequences down the line.
Exactly.
And it's not as simple as just, dealing with a little dirty water damage. It's so much more than that.
It really is. What we're talking about is contaminated floodwater. It's this toxic mix. You've got chemicals, sewage, oils, all of that seeping into everything. And think about coastal areas for a second. You've got the added danger of salt water, which is incredibly corrosive and a very good conductor of electricity. Talk about a recipe for disaster when it comes to electrical systems.
Okay, so let's break this down a bit. We've got these contaminated floodwaters, and they're affecting things that we don't normally see, like the wiring inside our walls.
Right, and that's where NEMA comes in, the National Electrical Manufacturers Association.
Okay.
They're the leading authority on these systems, and their stance on flood-damaged components is crystal clear. Replace, don't just inspect.
So just a quick visual check, it's not enough.
Not at all.
Why is that replacement so crucial?
Well, you see, corrosion, which is often invisible to the naked eye, weakens those components over time, and it significantly increases the risk of the entire system failing.
So something could look perfectly fine on the outside, but
Yeah.
actually be like a ticking time bomb.
Exactly. A perfect example is dry-rated wiring. It's very common in homes.
Hmm.
Now, this type of wiring, it's designed for dry environments, obviously,
Wow.
and it's usually sheathed in a material that's flame retardant, but not necessarily water resistant. After drying out, it might look okay.
Okay.
But if you try to re-energize it, you're talking about a serious shock hazard.
Wow.
So that recommendation from NEMA, that's all about safety, not just a quick fix.
That's a serious concern.
Yeah.
And it's not even just about like the immediate risk of electrocution or something. It's about the long term, like the system's integrity itself.
Exactly, the long game. And the danger here, it goes beyond just the wiring you can't see inside the walls.
Okay.
Think about all the other systems, communication systems, alarms, even sprinkler systems. They're all vulnerable.
Because they all rely on electrical wiring and circuits.
You got it. Corrosion can disrupt those circuits, and you end up with malfunctions that could have really serious consequences. Imagine a fire, right, in a flood-damaged building, but the alarm system is compromised.
Right. Yeah.
That's a disaster, just waiting to happen.
And it's not just about fires either, right? Like, what about security systems failing in a flood-damaged house?
Yeah,
Someone could be vulnerable in a whole different way.
absolutely, you're right. These systems are all interconnected.
Hmm.
And one failure, it creates this domino effect, increasing the risk across the board. And then there's the circuit breakers. They're supposed to protect against electrical overloads, right? Short circuits. But if they're contaminated from floodwater, they become useless.
Oh, wow.
And instead of breaking the circuit like they're supposed to, they can fail, and that increases the risk of fires even more.
It's kind of scary when you think about how much damage could be hiding, like right out of sight.
Yeah, it's a hidden threat.
And it feels like most people probably don't even realize the risk until it's too late.
Exactly. One of the articles you sent over from MSO, they advise on property and casualty insurance. By the way, they had this really striking example from Superstorm Sandy.
Oh, yeah, that one really stuck with me too.
Yeah.
It just shows how appearances can be so deceiving after something like that.
For sure. This building they were looking at seemed fine from the outside, like no big structural problems or anything.
Right.
But then they actually got inside and checked out the electrical system.
Totally different story, right?
Night and day. Damaged wiring, sprinklers that wouldn't work, no alarm signals, and that's what's so scary. These systems, they all rely on each other.
Yeah.
So if one fails, it's like this domino effect. And we haven't even touched on the long-term health risks here, like
Yeah.
mold growing inside the walls. That's a whole other can of worms.
That's a really good point. You're right. This isn't just about being safe right away. It's those long-term problems that could take, what, months, even years to really deal with.
Exactly. And that brings us to another really important issue under insurance. You wouldn't believe how many people get caught off guard because they just assume their homeowner's insurance covers flood damage.
It does seem like one of those things you would just assume you're covered for.
Right. But the reality is, most standard policies, they offer very little protection when it comes to floods.
Wow, so even if you're thinking, flooding won't happen to me, it's still worth double-checking your policy.
100%. And here's the thing, even if you have flood insurance, you might not be covered for enough. The average flood claim is something like $48,000 for a home and over $85,000 for a business.
Wow.
But in a year with a lot of floods, that average payout, it goes way up. Like in 2017, it was $91,735.
That's a huge difference. What makes those costs go so high?
Well, you got to think about the specialized labor involved. Electricians who know how to handle flood damage systems, they're in super high demand after a disaster.
Right, it's very specialized work.
Totally. Plus, you've got permit requirements, code upgrades. That all adds up. After a flood, the building codes in your area, they might have been updated. So now you have to make sure everything meets those new standards.
Oh, wow, I hadn't even thought about that.
And that could mean replacing old components or even like rewiring entire parts of your house. Plus, don't forget about mold remediation. That needs special expertise too.
Man, it really adds up fast.
It does. And I can only imagine how stressful all those costs would be for someone dealing with a flood, especially on top of all the emotional stuff and just the logistics of getting everything back to normal.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's exactly why having good flood insurance is so important. It gives you that safety net, that financial cushion when you need it most.
So if someone's listening to this and thinking, okay, I need to look into flood insurance, where's a good place to start?
Well, the good news is that you've got options.
Okay, good.
There's the National Flood Insurance Program.
Mm-hmm.
FEMA manages that one.
Okay.
Or you can get flood insurance from some private insurance companies, too.
So it's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. You really got to shop around, compare different policies.
Yeah, exactly. It's like anything else you'd shop for. Talk to your insurance agent, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yep.
Get multiple quotes. The important thing is to make sure you really understand what the policy covers, what it doesn't cover, and how much your deductible would be if you actually had a flood.
It's funny. We always think about insurance as something we hope we never have to use, right?
Right.
But in this case, being prepared, making sure you have the right coverage, that could be the difference between like an inconvenience and a total financial disaster.
That's a really good way to put it. It's about peace of mind, knowing that if something happens, you've got some backup.
Definitely. Speaking of peace of mind, are there things people can do even before a flood happens to kind of mitigate their risk a little?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people don't realize that. There are definitely things you can do to minimize the potential damage. For one, think about elevating those critical utilities. Your water heater, your furnace, your electrical panel. Even a few inches can make a big difference.
Makes sense. Get them above that potential flood level.
Yep. You could also look into flood vents for your basement or crawl space.
Okay.
They sound counterintuitive, but those vents actually allow water to flow in and out more easily, which can prevent damage to the structure itself.
Wait, so you're saying like let the water in?
It seems weird, I know, but it's all about equalizing the pressure.
Oh, okay.
Because if the water can't flow, it puts all this pressure on your foundation, which can cause cracks, even collapses.
Oh, wow.
Those flood vents, they help relieve some of that pressure.
That's a really good tip.
Yeah.
What about after a flood? Anything specific people should keep in mind?
Safety first, always. Number one.
Yeah.
Never, ever go into a building that's flooded until you've turned off the electricity at the main breaker.
Right.
And even after the water goes down, don't assume anything's safe to use. Like
Yeah.
we talked about, there could be hidden damage that you need a professional to check out.
Definitely better to be safe than sorry.
100%.
Yeah.
Oh, and document everything. Take pictures of all the damage. Keep records of every conversation with your insurance company. Save those receipts for repairs. Trust me, that's going to be so important when you're filing a claim.
It sounds like information is key, like every step of the way.
Yeah.
Knowing what to look for, understanding what your options are, and really advocating for yourself when it comes to the insurance part.
You got it. Knowledge is power. And in this situation, it could save you a lot of stress and money in the long run.
Well said. You've given everyone listening a lot to think about today. Hopefully this deep dive has been eye-opening, especially when it comes to those hidden dangers of flood damage, particularly with electrical systems. Remember, it's not just about what you can see. It's about understanding the risks you might not even be thinking about, and then taking action to protect yourself, your family, and your property. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.